The assembly of lawyers and idle spectators in the Manhattan family court had prepared themselves for the usual spectacle of scorched earth divorce proceedings. They expected the shrieks, the accusations, the desperate scramble for the last sliver of alimony. They expected Emily Sterling to fight, tooth and nail, for every asset she was entitled to. Instead, Emily Sterling affixed her signature to the final decree with a silence so profound, a calmness so terrifying, that it wasn't just chilling, it was arctic. The lack of tremor in her hand, the utter stillness of her expression, sent a wave of unease through the packed gallery. Her soon-to-be ex-husband, Marcus Sterling, a man whose ego occupied more space than his private jet, permitted himself a low, triumphant laugh. He watched her departure, clutching only the faded trench coat wrapped around her, utterly convinced of his decisive victory. He believed he had stripped her bare, leaving her shattered and destitute. Marcus congratulated himself on the efficiency of the massacre. He thought he had extinguished her entirely, reducing his wife of 10 years to a footnote. But Marcus knew nothing of the silent covenant made weeks prior, nor the appointment she kept just outside. He assumed she was walking into the abyss of unemployment and subsidized housing. He was wrong. The moment her cheap boots hit the slick, rainy Manhattan sidewalk, she wasn't entering poverty. She was stepping across the threshold of a vengeance-fueled empire. The sight of the custom midnight blue vehicle, a predatory, extended phantom Rolls-Royce gliding silently to the curb, was the first physical shock. Marcus's triumphant smirk dissolved instantly, and when the rear window of that impossible car rolled down, revealing the identity of the person waiting for her, Marcus Sterling didn't just stop laughing. He realized with sickening clarity that the life he had just fought so hard to protect had already been terminated. The imposing, heavy oak doors of the Manhattan family courthouse, usually the stage for operatic outbursts and tear-drenched pleas for justice, were eerily subdued today. Inside the claustrophobic confines of courtroom 3B, the air hung heavy, a cloying mix of industrial floor wax and the intensely masculine scent of expensive Audiobook cologne, a fragrance specifically favored by Marcus Sterling. Marcus was lounging in his oversized leather chair, the picture of smug success, ostentatiously adjusting the diamond cufflinks of his impeccably tailored Italian suit. Beside him, his counsel, Silas Vance, a man universally known in high finance circles as the Shark of Second Avenue, rhythmically stacked his documents. Tap, tap, tap. Cold, aggressive tempo. Across the aisle, Emily seemed deliberately insignificant. She was draped in a faded gray trench coat that looked inherited rather than purchased, clearly having endured far too many harsh winters. Her hands, resting on the scarred wooden table, were conspicuously bare. The 10-carat solitaire that had signified her bondage had been liquidated 3 months ago, just enough to cover the retainer for a lawyer who had subsequently decided the fight was unwinnable, or perhaps too dangerous. Emily was utterly, deliberately alone. Judge Harrison peered over his half-moon spectacles, his gaze stern but slightly weary. "Mr. Vance," he addressed the shark, "does the respondent have representation?" Silas Vance rose slowly, buttoning his jacket in a movement of practiced contempt. "It appears not, Your Honor." Mrs. Sterling seems to have finally accepted the brutal reality of her position. "We are prepared to proceed with the default judgment." Marcus leaned in, his voice a stage whisper designed to echo only slightly louder than necessary. "Save yourself the public humiliation, Em. Just sign the damn papers. You can't afford to fight me. You can't even afford the subway fare back to whatever cheap apartment you'll end up in." Emily did not so much as twitch. She didn't grant him the courtesy of turning her head. Her gaze was locked straight ahead on the massive, ornate seal of the state of New York mounted behind the judge. Her complexion was spectral, evidence of a decade of neglect and recent sleepless plotting. Yet her posture was unervingly rigid, a spine of tempered steel. "Mrs. Sterling?" Judge Harrison pressed her, his voice softening with an undertone of professional concern. "Do you fully comprehend the terms laid out by your husband? He is asserting full, unchallenged ownership of the marital mansion in the Hamptons, the penthouse in Tribeca, and all vested stock in Sterling Dynamics. He is magnanimously offering a one-time, non-negotiable settlement of $10,000. The judge paused, leaning forward. Do you contest these terms? The courtroom went into a state of suspended animation. The court stenographer actually paused, her fingers hovering, anticipating the theatrical, tearful rejection. $10,000 for 10 years of marriage to a man valued in the hundreds of millions was not merely an insult. It was a devastating humiliation. Marcus checked the platinum chronometer on his wrist, a dismissive gesture. He had a 1 p.m. reservation at Le Bernardin with his current distraction, a vapid 22-year-old model named Jessica, and he loathed being kept waiting. Come on, Emily, he muttered under his breath. Don't be the martyr. Emily stood. The harsh scrape of the wooden chair against the marble floor was the loudest sound in the room. She reached slowly into her cheap, worn purse. Silas Vance's shoulders tensed, ready to spring up an object to any 11th-hour evidence. A hidden wiretap, a damning photograph. Marcus merely rolled his eyes, utterly bored. But Emily didn't retrieve evidence. She didn't pull out the documented photos of Marcus and Jessica entering the Baccarat Hotel, nor did she produce the detailed bank statements showing the clandestine siphoning of company money into discreet offshore accounts. She simply pulled out a generic black ballpoint pen. I do not contest it, Emily stated. Her voice was thin and used, but perfectly steady. I beg your pardon? Judge Harrison blinked, flustered. Mrs. Sterling, I am legally obligated to inform you that these terms are monumentally unfavorable. You are entitled to equitable distribution. I said I do not contest it, she repeated, cutting the judge off with chilling precision. She walked to the clerk's bench, the click-clack of her budget boots echoing aggressively in the silence. She took the thick document. Marcus exchanged a startled, confused look with Silas. What is she doing? You broke her, Marcus. She knows she can't even stand up, let alone win, Silas whispered back, a slow, ugly grin stretching his face. Emily signed her name, Emily Sterling. The ink was deep, black, and irreversible. Her hand was perfectly still. She didn't tremble. She didn't allow a single tear. She set the pen down with a controlled, deliberate click. Is that all, Your Honor? She asked, her voice flat. If you are absolutely certain, the judge stammered, deeply disturbed by the performance. Then yes, the divorce is granted. You are dismissed, Mrs. Sterling. Emily turned. For the first time in 6 months, she looked directly at Marcus. He braced himself, ready for the satisfying sight of defeat. The plea for pity, the desperate request to keep the dog or the shared subscription service. He craved the terror in her eyes, the stark fear of a 40-year-old woman facing the brutal marketplace with no recent resume, no resources, and no protective husband. But Emily's eyes were arid. They were arctic. It was the gaze of a sheet of ice, reflecting nothing. Goodbye, Marcus, she said, her voice a benediction of doom. Enjoy the 10 grand. Emily, Marcus managed, the tension breaking into pure, triumphant arrogance. He laughed. Try not to spend it all on cat food. She offered no response. She simply pushed through the massive, brass-handled wooden doors and stepped out. Outside, the atmosphere had deteriorated into a punishing biblical storm. The gray sky had burst open, and a torrential downpour was actively thrashing the streets of downtown Manhattan. A vicious wind wrapped around the courthouse pillars, instantly rendering expensive silk umbrellas inside out and useless. Marcus and Silas emerged 5 minutes later, still reveling in their victory. Did you see her expression? Marcus guffawed, attempting to light a Cuban cigar under the minimal shelter of the courthouse overhang. She was completely mute, utterly crushed. God, I should have discarded her years ago. You are a free man, Mr. Sterling, Silas confirmed, tapping away on his encrypted phone. And a substantially richer one. Her failure to contest the stock options alone saved you approximately $4 million. A colossal misstep. She's an imbecile, Marcus said, exhaling a plume of smoke directly into the sheets of rain. Always content to be a simple, decorative housewife. No ambition, no business spine. Look at her now. Marcus gestured contemptuously. At the base of the grand granite staircase, Emily was standing on the slick sidewalk. She was utterly unprotected. The rain was saturating the heavy gray coat, pasting strands of wet hair against her pale cheeks. From their vantage point, she looked impossibly small, truly pathetic. Should we perform an act of charity and offer her a ride to the nearest subway entrance? Silas joked cruelly. Absolutely not, Marcus sneered. Let her walk. It builds character. Emily remained perfectly motionless in the deluge. She wasn't hailing a yellow cab. She wasn't frantically checking her phone for a bus schedule. She was just standing, staring blankly at the chaotic traffic, rainwater dripping steadily from the tip of her nose. Then, the surrounding traffic seemed to perform an unnatural split. A profound, low-frequency hum began to vibrate through the wet asphalt. Around the corner materialized a vehicle that silenced the wind and the rain. It was not a cab, nor was it a luxury SUV. It was a sleek, extended Phantom Rolls-Royce, customized in a deep midnight blue, so polished it absorbed all light and appeared truly black. The massive chrome rims gleamed ominously even in the depressing gloom. It moved with the silent, heavy grace of an apex predator. Marcus's laughter died in his throat. Whoa, that is some serious hardware. I wonder who that belongs to. Maybe the DA? The Rolls-Royce did not continue past. It slowed down with exquisite smoothness. It pulled up directly, precisely, in front of the woman soaking wet in the threadbare gray coat. No way, Silas muttered, his voice barely audible. Is that stopping? For her? Don't be ridiculous, Marcus scoffed, though the certainty was cracking. She's probably obstructing the curb. They're going to lay on the horn and tell her to move her pathetic ass. They did not honk. The back door of the Rolls-Royce unlocked with a quiet, expensive click. A chauffeur, dressed in an immaculate, razor-sharp uniform, white gloves visible even in the dim light, stepped out fearlessly into the punishing rain. He seemed wholly unconcerned with the weather. He walked around the vehicle, producing a massive, pristine black umbrella, which he opened and held meticulously over Emily's head. He bowed. It was a precise, deeply respectful bow, the kind reserved exclusively for high-ranking foreign royalty or absolute power. Who the hell is that? Marcus whispered, the ruined cigar slipping from his nerveless fingers. Emily offered the driver a succinct, unsurprised nod. Then, she turned her head back toward the courthouse steps. She looked straight up, directly at Marcus. The distance was 40 feet and the air was thick with rain. But Marcus saw it with terrifying clarity. A smile. It wasn't a smile of relief or courtesy. It was terrifying. A cold, calculated, predatory expression that promised inevitable suffering. She ducked into the expansive back seat. The driver closed the massive door with a solid, definitive thud that resonated through the storm like the report of a sniper rifle. But before the car could glide away, the rear window rolled down just a single inch. Marcus strained to see. He could make out a man seated inside, beside Emily. He couldn't distinguish the face in the gloom, but he clearly saw the hand resting casually on the windowsill. On the man's pinky finger, catching the dismal light, was a massive, distinctive gold signet ring engraved with the rampant crest of a roaring lion. Marcus froze instantly. His blood became a glacial slush in his veins. He knew that ring. He had seen it on the cover of Forbes magazine, flashed across every major global news outlet, and recognized it as the signature motif in the nightmares of every competitive CEO in the city. That's impossible, Marcus stammered, his face leaching entirely of color. What? Who is it? Silas demanded, bending closer. That ring, Marcus choked out, tasting ash. That is the crest of the Thorne family. That's Julian Thorne. Silas Vance dropped his expensive briefcase onto the wet concrete. Julian Thorne, the notorious billionaire recluse, the man rumored to quietly own half the digital infrastructure in North America. Marcus, if he is involved. The Rolls-Royce engine purred. A deep, confident growl of effortless power. It pulled away from the curb, sending a sheet of water splashing contemptuously onto the sidewalk where Marcus stood, and disappeared into the New York traffic stream. Marcus was left abandoned on the steps, the icy rain whipping against his skin, his expensive suit saturated, his victory cigar soggy and ruined. "Why?" Marcus whispered, his voice trembling uncontrollably. "Why is my ex-wife getting into a car with the man who could liquidate and purchase my entire company before he finishes his morning coffee?" His phone, nestled in his inside pocket, began to vibrate. Not a single buzz, but a frantic, non-stop, desperate tremor. Marcus pulled it out with hands that shook violently. It was Jerry, his chief financial officer. "What?" Marcus barked into the receiver, desperation overriding his arrogance. "Marcus, where are you?" Jerry screamed, panic vibrating across the connection. "You need to get to the office now. This is critical. I just got divorced, Jerry. I'm celebrating. What is so urgent?" "It's the stock," the CFO wailed. "Sterling Dynamics. Someone just initiated a hostile, surgical takeover. They're hitting every line. The price is plummeting. We're losing control, Marcus. We're being annihilated." "Who?" Marcus shrieked, staring blindly at the empty spot where the Rolls-Royce had just been. "Who the hell is buying us?" "It's a holding company we've never encountered," Jerry gasped, the sound of chaos audible in the background. "It's called Nemesis Global." Marcus dropped the phone. It struck the wet concrete and shattered instantly. Nemesis, the Greek goddess of revenge. He turned to Silas, whose face was now the color of bleached parchment. "She didn't sign the papers because she gave up," Marcus whispered, the realization hitting him with the force of a physical blow to the chest. "She signed them because she didn't need my pathetic $10,000. She has his money." The opulent interior of the Rolls-Royce was a perfect sanctuary of engineered silence, insulated completely from the metropolitan storm by layers of soundproofing, inches of steel, and bulletproof glass. The air was rich with the scent of fine, aged Italian leather and faint, elusive traces of jasmine. Emily settled back into the plush, custom seat, allowing her eyes to close for a brief, cleansing moment. When they snapped open again, the dull, defeated expression she had meticulously cultivated in the courtroom was utterly gone. In its place was a predatory sharpness, a clarity of purpose that felt powerful enough to slice glass. She reached up slowly and pulled the elastic tie from her sloppy, wet bun, allowing her dark, heavy hair to cascade over her shoulders. She ran her fingers through it, shedding the restrictive persona of the long-suffering, ignored housewife like a snake shedding unwanted, dead skin. "Champagne?" the man beside her inquired. Julian Thorne did not look like a corporate savior. He looked like a sovereign in exile. Late 30s, with sculpted, unforgiving cheekbones and eyes the color of newly minted steel. He wore a suit that likely cost more than Marcus Sterling's entire car collection, but he wore it with such casual disregard it seemed unimportant. He held out a crystal flute brimming with vintage Dom Perignon. Emily accepted the glass, but didn't drink immediately. She looked at him directly. "Is it initiated?" "The acquisition process began the precise moment your pen lifted from the divorce documents," Julian stated, his voice deep, smooth, and absolute. "My team at Nemesis Global triggered the automated buy orders at 12:01 p.m. By the time Marcus is capable of staggering back to his panic room, he'll own less than 40% of the company he founded. By tomorrow morning, he will be a glorified employee in a building he used to rule absolutely." Emily took a slow, deliberate sip of the champagne. The fine bubbles burned pleasantly, waking her throat. "And the house in the Hamptons?" "Already purchased via a clean shell corporation," Julian replied, a faint, genuine smirk touching his lips. "We are converting it into a large-scale, no-kill dog shelter." "I thought that particular touch was appropriate." Emily actually laughed. It was a dry, rusty sound of long-suppressed amusement. "He despises dogs. He's severely allergic." "I am aware," Julian confirmed. "I read the file thoroughly." He pressed a discreet button on the console. A hidden mahogany compartment slid open silently, revealing a sleek, silver laptop and a fresh set of clothes. A crisp, tailored white power blazer, a silk charcoal blouse, and sharply cut trousers. An ensemble that screamed uncompromising authority. "You have a preliminary meeting in precisely 2 hours," Julian said, his tone shifting abruptly from supportive friend to demanding business partner. "The board of Thorn Enterprises is waiting. They are frankly terrified, Emily. They haven't seen the architect in a decade. Some believe you're merely a myth. Others devoutly believe you are dead." Emily looked down at the laptop, tracing the cold edge of the device with her thumb. 10 years ago, before she was reduced to Emily Sterling, the invisible wife of a mid-level tech aravista, she was Emily Vane. In the rarefied, brutal world of high-stakes corporate strategy and industrial espionage, she was known simply as the architect. She didn't merely build companies. She engineered their total market dominance. She could glance at a complex balance sheet and flawlessly predict the next quarter's future. She could look at a competitor's CEO and immediately identify their most exploitable psychological breaking point. But then she had met Marcus, a charming, superficially ambitious dreamer, and she had craved normalcy. She wanted the quiet comfort of being a wife, perhaps eventually a mother. She desired peace. So, she had buried Emily Vane. She had systematically, meticulously dumbed herself down. She had nodded enthusiastically when Marcus patronizingly explained simple concepts to her. She cooked his meals while he shamelessly cheated. She played the supportive role while he consistently belittled her formidable intelligence. For 10 long years she had played the fool flawlessly. But she had never stopped watching. She had never stopped listening. Every time Marcus took a sensitive call on speakerphone, every time he carelessly left a confidential merger document on the kitchen counter, she absorbed the data. She knew exactly where the bodies were buried because she had quietly watched him dig the graves. "I am not Emily Vane anymore," she whispered, her voice hardening. "No," Julian agreed, a spark of respect in his steel eyes. "You are something significantly more dangerous. You are a woman with a score that must be settled in blood." He leaned in closer. "I upheld my end of this bargain, Emily. Marcus is currently being systematically dismantled. His public reputation will be shredded beyond repair. He will soon be utterly destitute. Now I require you to uphold yours. My company is hemorrhaging capital. The relentless Asian markets are crushing us. I need the strategy you promised me. I need the fix." Emily set the champagne flute aside. Her eyes narrowed further. The last traces of softness vanished. "Hand me the laptop," she commanded. Julian obeyed instantly. She cracked the screen open, and her fingers flew across the keyboard with a dazzling speed and precision that had not diminished in a decade of domesticity. "Cancel the proposed merger with Omnicorp immediately," she ordered without looking up from the data stream. "It's a deliberate trap. Their debt is cunningly hidden within a network of shell subsidiaries based in the Caymans. I saw Marcus trying to replicate that exact structural flaw last year. It's a literal house of cards." Julian raised an impressed eyebrow. He pulled out his own phone and sent a concise, immediate text message. "Done. What is the next command?" "Short the lithium futures," Emily continued, her gaze devouring streams of financial data, "and set up a high-priority meeting with the Minister of Trade in Singapore. Tell him," her lips curved into a faint internal smile, "tell him the architect remembers the favor he owes us from the trade tariffs of 2015. Julian smiled, a genuine, relieved expression. "Welcome back, Emily." She paused her typing and looked out the rain-streaked window. They were speeding past the lush greenery of Central Park. "Marcus thinks he took everything from me," she said quietly, her reflection superimposed on the blurring city. "He believes he stole my youth, my confidence, my identity. But he forgot the single thing I never, ever gave him." "What's that?" "My mind," Emily said. "Driver. Change of destination." The driver's watchful eyes appeared instantly in the rearview mirror. "Yes, ma'am? We are not going to the airfield just yet," Emily said, a chilling, final smile forming on her lips. "Take us directly to the Sterling Dynamics headquarters. I want to see the fire while it's still burning hot." The headquarters of Sterling Dynamics, a colossal, mirrored glass monolith dominating the financial district, was a physical monument to Marcus Sterling's grotesque ego. Usually, the vast, echoing lobby was a hushed cathedral of efficient commerce. Today it was utter pandemonium. Marcus burst through the revolving doors, water streaming from his ruined, $5,000 suit. He ignored the bewildered security guards attempting to salute him. He ran blindly for the express elevators, Silas Vance struggling to keep pace, his heavy briefcase dragging awkwardly. "Why are the phones not working properly?" Marcus screamed at his assistant, a terrified young woman named Sarah, as he stormed past her triage desk. "They are working, Mr. Sterling," Sarah wailed, clutching a desk phone to her chest. "They just will not stop ringing. It's the institutional shareholders, the major press outlets. The SEC is demanding an immediate online conference." 2. The SEC? Marcus froze instantly, his hand hovering over the solid brass handle of his corner office door. "Why, in God's name, is the Securities and Exchange Commission calling me? Insider trading allegations?" Sarah whispered, her face pale. "Someone anonymously leaked the emails, sir. The ones concerning the Project Horizon environmental cover-up." Marcus felt the last vestiges of blood drain from his face. He staggered blindly into his expansive office and slammed the door with punishing force. "That is absolutely impossible," he hissed at Silas, pacing manically. "Those emails were housed on a private server, meticulously encrypted. Only I had the complex password. I composed them on my laptop at home." Silas slumped heavily onto the cream leather sofa, frantically yanking his restrictive tie loose. "At home," Silas repeated slowly, the word hanging like a death sentence. "Where your wife lived. The wife you just systematically humiliated in open court. The wife you repeatedly called an imbecile who couldn't balance a checkbook. She didn't know the password," Marcus yelled, sweat beading on his forehead. "It was complicated. It was my birthday backwards, combined with the name of my first company." Silas buried his face in his hands. "You are an idiot, Marcus. Colossal, unforgivable idiot." Marcus rushed to his command console. The enormous screen was strobing an aggressive, panic-inducing red alert. The stock ticker for Sterling Dynamics, SDYN, was in total freefall. It had opened that morning at $145 a share. It was currently trading at $62 and plummeting. Ding! An email notification popped up. It wasn't from his legal team or his CFO. It was from an external address. Nemesis at Thornend.com. The subject line, stark and chilling, read, "Checkmate." Marcus clicked it open with a finger trembling so badly he nearly missed the mouse. The body of the email was empty, containing only one attachment, a short video file. He clicked play. The video displayed a high-definition live feed from a discrete camera positioned across the street from his building. It showed the entire front entrance of Sterling Dynamics. In the video, the black Rolls-Royce pulled smoothly up to the curb. "Is that?" Marcus squinted at the screen, then instantly ran to his office window, 40 floors above the street. "Is that Liv?" 40 stories below, he saw the identical black car. He saw the immediate, desperate swarm of paparazzi and reporters who had gathered, sensing corporate blood in the water. On the video screen, the rear door opened. First, Julian Thorne emerged, impossibly tall, composed, and instantly drawing a riot of flashbulbs. But Julian didn't head for the doors. He turned and offered his hand to someone still inside. A woman stepped out. She was no longer wearing the pathetic gray trench coat. She was clad in the formidable, snow-white power suit that seemed to radiate light against the gloom of the storm. Her hair was loose, styled, and utterly fierce. She looked up, not at the blinding cameras, but directly at the monolith. Specifically, she looked up at the 40th floor corner window. Marcus stumbled violently back from the glass. "It's Emily. What in God's name is she doing here?" Silas gasped, joining him at the window, his jaw slack. On the screen, Emily walked toward the entrance, flanked by Julian Thorne and a phalanx of silent, imposing security guards. "She's coming up," Marcus whispered, the sound raw with fear. "She's coming here. You cannot let her in." Silas panicked. "Security won't clear her access." Marcus's internal intercom buzzed sharply. It was Sarah, his assistant, her voice a terrified squeak. "Mr. Sterling, Mr. Thorne is here to see you. And Mrs. Sterling. Tell them to leave." Marcus screamed into the intercom. "Tell security to eject them immediately." "ICC can't, sir." Sarah stammered, sobbing slightly. "Mr. Thorne just bought the building's underlying debt. He technically controls the elevators now." The elevator doors outside Marcus's office chimed. A cheerful metallic sound that signaled the inevitable arrival of his doom. Marcus instinctively grabbed a heavy glass paperweight, then dropped it instantly, realizing how pitifully futile he looked. He quickly straightened his tie. He attempted to rearrange his features into a mask of executive authority. The office doors didn't just open, they burst inward. Emily didn't walk in. She swept in. The energy in the spacious room shifted instantly, the atmosphere thinning, charged with palpable, dangerous electricity. Julian Thorne leaned casually against the doorframe, arms folded, looking like a supremely confident bodyguard who secretly owned the entire damned establishment. "Get out," Marcus snarled, though his voice failed him, cracking miserably. "You have no legal business here. We are divorced. You signed the papers." Emily stopped directly in front of his massive, imposing desk. She gazed down at the deep, polished mahogany surface, a surface where she had once nervously placed a catered lunch, only to be dismissed with the chilling pronouncement that she was interrupting important genius work. Now, her fingers closed around the solid brass nameplate that boldly proclaimed Marcus Sterling, CEO. "I did sign the papers," Emily said. Her voice was utterly transformed. It was no longer the soft, agreeable murmur of the supportive wife. It was the sharp, honed steel of the woman who had once navigated and negotiated complex treaties between warring global oil giants. "And I want to thank you for that, Marcus. That settlement was the best deal I ever made. You got 10 grand. Marcus chuckled. A thin, nervous sound that didn't reach his eyes. "You got nothing." "I got my freedom," she stated calmly, setting the name plate down with precision. "And crucially, I got immunity. Since we are no longer married, I am no longer financially liable for the catastrophic debts you are about to incur. And, perhaps most damagingly for you, I am no longer bound by spousal privilege. I can testify." "Testify about what?" Silas demanded, jumping up from his chair, his face losing its practiced legal composure. Emily shifted her gaze, turning the full force of her cool stare onto the nervous lawyer. Silas involuntarily took a significant step backward. "About the 5-figure bribes to the zoning commissioner for the warehouse project?" Emily listed, beginning to tick off the indictments on her perfectly manicured fingers. "About the safety reports you deliberately falsified for the new battery prototype that endangered hundreds of potential customers? About the fact that Jessica isn't just a high-paid model, Marcus, but the strategically placed niece of your primary competitor. And she's been recording every word of your drunken pillow talk for the last 6 months." Marcus's face went slack. His jaw physically dropped. "Jessica, no, she loves me. She loves your MX Black card," Emily corrected flatly, which, by the way, was just declined at Cartier 15 minutes ago. "I saw the alert pop up on the shared cloud service before I disconnected and wiped all your access." Marcus visibly crumpled, sinking further into the expensive leather of his high-backed chair. "What do you want, Emily? Money? I'll give you money. We can tear up the divorce papers right now. We can work this out, my love." Emily let out a laugh. It was a cold, pure sound, entirely genuine in its malice. "I don't want your money, Marcus. I have my own now. I'm the new Chief Strategy Officer for Thorne Enterprises. My signing bonus alone was more than your entire company made in the last 2 quarters combined." She picked up the nameplate again, examined it briefly, and then dropped it carelessly into the waiting leather-bound trash can beside his desk. Clunk. The sound was absolute finality. "I came here for one reason, to tell you to run," she said, her voice dropping to a low, intense whisper. "Run." The SEC and the FBI Joint Task Force are already in the lobby, she informed him. Julian stalled them for exactly 2 minutes so I could come up here and deliver this message personally. They have the warrants, and they are not here for paperwork. You have about... She checked the face of her elegant Cartier watch, a timepiece Marcus had always claimed was too ostentatious for her. 60 seconds before they put you in regulation handcuffs. Marcus stared wildly at the opulent office door. He looked at the sealed, bulletproof window overlooking the Manhattan skyline. Finally, his desperate gaze landed on Emily. Why? He managed to whisper, his voice hoarse with genuine confusion. Why help me run? Emily leaned in close, her face inches from his, the scent of her expensive perfume contrasting sharply with his rising panic. I'm not helping you run, Marcus. I'm giving you a head start, because the hunt is so much more viscerally fun when the prey is actually moving. She straightened up, suddenly bored with the spectacle, and nodded to Julian. I'm bored. Let's go. As they turned to depart, the elevator chimed again. This time it was not a desperate husband or a loyal assistant. For grim-faced agents in stark FBI windbreakers stepped out, moving with calculated speed. Marcus Sterling. The lead agent barked, his voice carrying authority and menace. Emily did not look back. She walked past the incoming agents with serene calm, the clicking of her heels a rhythmic counterpoint to the growing chaos. As the agents swarmed into the office and Marcus began to shriek desperately for his lawyer, Emily stepped into the descending elevator with Julian. The stainless steel doors slid shut, sealing away the noise and the reality of Marcus's complete and utter destruction. That was impressively ruthless, Julian noted quietly as the elevator dropped silently toward the ground floor. There was a palpable hint of admiration in his voice, tempered only by a healthy, professional dose of fear. That was just the opening move, Emily replied, staring intently at her flawless reflection in the polished brass doors. Marcus is merely the pawn. Now I want the king. The king? Julian questioned, raising an eyebrow. The man who instructed Marcus on how to hide the money, Emily clarified. Marcus isn't remotely clever enough to set up complex offshore accounts in the Caymans by himself. He had a puppet master, someone who has been leveraging sterling dynamics to systematically launder vast amounts of money for the cartel. Julian stiffened instantly, his posture going rigid. Cartel? Emily? That specific detail was absolutely not included in the briefing materials. I know, she said, a faint, dangerous smile touching her lips. I strategically saved the best part for last. Marcus is going to prison, yes, but he won't survive a single week if he talks. And trust me, he will talk, which means we have not just initiated a divorce. We have successfully kicked a highly organized hornet's nest that spans at least 3 continents. Her smile widened, and for the first time since the rain began, it looked like she was genuinely, deeply enjoying the game. Ready for a real challenge, Julian? 2 weeks later, Marcus Sterling sat alone on a thin, stiff cot in a grim holding cell at the Metropolitan Detention Center. His bespoke Italian suit had been replaced by an ill-fitting orange jumpsuit that perpetually smelled of industrial bleach and overwhelming despair. He hadn't been allowed to see his son in 14 agonizing days. His slick lawyer, Silas, had abruptly quit after the very first retainer check bounced. Marcus was completely alone, utterly bankrupt, and paralyzed by terror. He spent his long, vacant days staring at the coarse concrete wall, endlessly replaying that defining moment in the cold rain when the Rolls-Royce pulled away from him forever. Meanwhile, across the East River, Emily was stepping fully into the light. The annual Obsidian Gala was not merely an event. It was the most exclusive, high-stakes gathering in New York City. It was the place where billionaires shook hands, made private agreements, and decisively decided the fate of global industries and small nations. Tonight, the primary topic of hushed conversation wasn't volatile oil prices or booming tech stocks. It was the striking woman who confidently walked in on Julian Thorne's arm. When Emily entered the cavernous ballroom, the live orchestra's music didn't actually stop, but the high-level conversation certainly did. She wore a dress of midnight blue velvet that moved with her silhouette like a liquid second skin, paired with a diamond choker that caught the reflected light with dazzling intensity with every subtle turn of her head. She looked regal, impossibly untouchable. A new queen staking her claim. "They're staring," Julian murmured, leaning in close to her ear, his breath warm. He looked undeniably dashing in his expertly tailored tuxedo, his hand resting proprietarily and protectively on the small of her bare back. "Let them stare," Emily whispered back, offering a practiced, brilliant smile for the omnipresent cameras. "They're simply trying to figure out if I'm the tragic victim or the calculated villain. And which role are you playing tonight? I'm the bait." They moved smoothly through the dense crowd of global power brokers, Emily accepting the stream of congratulations on her new appointment as CSO of Thorn Enterprises with graceful, dismissive nods. She noticed the faces of men who had once blatantly ignored her presence at Marcus's tedious dinner parties. Now, they looked at her with hungry, desperate eyes, silently praying she wouldn't set her sights on their company next. "Emily!" A voice boomed, cutting through the refined chatter. A man approached them. He was older, perhaps 60, with thick silver hair and a smile that, disturbingly, didn't seem to reach his cold, opaque eyes. He held a glass of dark scotch not like a drink, but like a potential weapon. "Victor Cray," Julian said, his voice instantly dropping an octave, the tension visibly spiking in his arm wrapped around her back. "I didn't think you'd dare show your face here, Victor." Victor Cray was a shipping magnate. On paper, he dealt in moving legitimate cargo. In reality, according to Emily's deep intelligence files, he moved everything the law vehemently forbade: weapons, narcotics, and vast sums of dirty money. He was the king the puppet master Marcus had been diligently washing money for. "I never miss a party," Victor said smoothly, taking a slow sip of his scotch. He then turned his full, chilling gaze onto Emily. It felt like a physical touch, both slimy and deeply invasive. "And this must be the famous Mrs. Sterling. Or is it Miss Vane again?" "Vane," Emily corrected, her voice ice-cold and utterly steady. "Mrs. Sterling died of terminal boredom." Victor chuckled, but there was zero humor in the sound. "A true shame about your unfortunate ex-husband. Marcus was actually a very useful tool for my operations. Blunt, perhaps a bit dim-witted, but he generally did exactly what he was told. You broke my tool, Miss Vane. That was very inconvenient for my bottom line." "He was defective," Emily replied, taking a delicate sip of her champagne. "I simply took out the trash. If you lost money in the process, Victor, perhaps you should start vetting your partners better. Or maybe, just maybe, you're finally losing your edge." The immediate circle of people around them had widened, forming a tense, silent perimeter. The air became thick with unspoken threats and rising aggression. Victor took a final, short step closer. He smelled overpoweringly of fine cigars and metallic gunpowder. "Or you genuinely think that because you're standing next to Julian Thorne, a little boy playing with calculators, that you're safe? I play with real consequences, Miss Vane. You personally cost me $50 million last week. I fully expect to be reimbursed for that loss. Send me an invoice." Emily smiled, radiating lethal confidence. "I'll be sure to file it neatly under unforeseen casualties." Victor's eyes narrowed into dangerous slits. He leaned in, his voice dropping to a menacing whisper that only she was intended to hear. "You're feeling very tall right now, but always remember, the taller the tower, the harder and faster it falls. Be extremely careful walking to your car tonight, Miss Vane. Accidents happen, especially in the rain." He patted Julian sharply on the shoulder, a gesture that was intended to look friendly but was clearly and undeniably a direct physical threat, and then melted back into the flow of the indifferent crowd. Julian immediately grabbed Emily's elbow, his grip like iron. "We are leaving this instant." "Not yet," Emily said, her pulse racing not with fear, but with exhilarating adrenaline. "He just confirmed it." "Confirmed what, for God's sake?" "That he's rattled. That he's scared," Emily stated. "He threatened me publicly, Julian. A man like Victor Cray only barks aggressively when he doesn't know precisely where to bite. We have him thoroughly rattled." "Rattled snakes bite," Julian hissed. "Let's go." The drive back to Julian's heavily secured estate in upstate New York was instantly tense. The rain had returned with a vengeance, lashing violently against the windshield of the armored SUV. This was not the smooth, elegant Rolls-Royce. This was the Beast, a military-grade vehicle cleverly disguised as a luxury Range Rover. Julian was driving, while his specialized security detail trailed them in a separate follow car behind. "You pushed him far too hard," Julian said, checking the rearview mirror for perhaps the 10th time in as many minutes. "Victor Cray isn't Marcus. He doesn't waste time suing people. He makes them permanently disappear." "I needed him to make a move," Emily countered, typing furiously on her high-spec laptop. "I'm tracking his financial accounts right now. The exact moment he threatened me, I triggered a live trace on his encrypted phone. He's already contacting his cleaners. If I can intercept the location of..." Suddenly, a blinding white light flared up behind them. Crash. The follow car. The security detail was instantly and violently rammed off the road by a massive, heavy-duty truck that surged out of the darkness of a side road. The security sedan spun wildly and uncontrollably into the deep ditch, its headlights spinning uselessly into the dense trees. "Hold on," Julian yelled. He slammed his foot down on the accelerator. The Beast roared, its custom V8 engine screaming a protest as it tore down the wet highway. Two sleek black SUVs simultaneously peeled out from another side road, instantly flanking them. They were hunting, moving in for the kill. "They're trying to box us in," Emily shouted, bracing herself firmly against the dashboard. "I see them." Julian gritted his teeth, his jaw tight. He swerved hard to the left, deliberately slamming the reinforced side of the Beast into one of the attacking SUVs. Metal shrieked hideously against metal, sparks flying in violent arcs like fireworks in the pouring rain. The attacking SUV wobbled precariously, but the driver was professional and held its position. The tinted window of the enemy car smoothly rolled down. A man in a black ski mask leaned out, gripping a submachine gun. Rat-tat-tat-tat-tat. Bullets hammered brutally against the side of Julian's vehicle. The specialized bulletproof glass spiderwebbed immediately, but miraculously did not shatter. "Get down!" Julian screamed, violently shoving Emily's head toward the floor well. "I can't hack the car if I'm on the floor," Emily yelled back, utterly defiant. She sat bolt upright, ignoring the terrifying sound of bullets pinging off the glass mirror inches from her face. "Julian, keep them steady. I'm trying to remotely access their vehicle's onboard computer system. Are you insane?" Julian shouted, aggressively drifting around a sharp, hairpin curve at 90 miles per hour. "Shoot back. There's a Glock in the glove box. I'm an architect, not a soldier," Emily snapped, her fingers flying across the keyboard. "I fight with code," she typed frantically. The attacking SUV was a modern, high-tech model, meaning it was inevitably connected to the cloud and, therefore, had a weakness. Every single smart car had a hidden vulnerability. "Come on. Come on," she muttered urgently to her screen. The signal bars on her display flickered violently. The second SUV rammed them hard from behind. The Beast fishtailed dangerously, skidding perilously close to the concrete guardrail. Below them lay a terrifying 100-foot drop into a rocky, black ravine. "Emily!" Julian roared, savagely wrestling with the steering wheel, fighting for control. "Got it!" she screamed triumphantly. She hit the enter key with all her force. On the highway, the lead attacking SUV instantly locked up. Emily had successfully overridden the electronic braking system, engaging the emergency parking brake while the vehicle was traveling at 80 miles per hour. The SUV flipped violently. It cartwheeled backward into the air, a nightmarish mass of twisting metal and shattered glass, and crashed spectacularly into the median barrier, immediately bursting into huge, raging flames. "One down," Emily yelled, breathing hard. "One behind us," Julian shouted back. The rear SUV was rapidly gaining ground, positioning itself to ram them over the cliff edge. Julian looked intensely at Emily. "Trust me?" he asked, his eyes desperate but determined. "Always," she breathed back. "Hold on." Julian slammed brutally on the brakes. It was an insane, suicidal maneuver. The SUV directly behind them had zero time to react. It smashed headlong into the reinforced rear bumper of the beast, but Julian's vehicle was literally built like a tank. The attacking SUV crumpled instantly like a discarded aluminum accordion upon impact, its engine block shattering completely. Julian immediately gunned the engine again, pulling away fast as the wrecked enemy car smoked and stalled, abandoned on the dark highway. Silence descended inside the car, broken only by the heavy, ragged breathing of two people who had just narrowly cheated death. Julian slowed the beast, his knuckles pure white against the steering wheel. He looked sideways at Emily. She was trembling slightly, but her eyes were blazing with victory and exhilaration. "You hacked a car," Julian said, a breathless, astonished laugh escaping him, at 90 miles an hour in a high-speed pursuit. "I told you," Emily said, smoothing her wind-blown hair, though her hands were still shaking visibly. "I cancelled his merger. Now I cancelled his ride." She stared intensely at the burning wreckage shrinking in the rearview mirror. "Victor Cray just made a catastrophic mistake," she whispered, her voice low and dangerous. "He tried to kill me. Now, this isn't just about business, it's war." Julian reached across the console and took her hand. His grip was powerful, iron-hard. "We need to go directly to the safe house," he instructed. "We can't go home. He knows where we live." "No," Emily said decisively. She turned to face him, her expression hard and utterly uncompromising. "We are not hiding. That's what the old Emily would have done. That's what Marcus's compliant wife would have done." "Then what exactly are we doing?" "We're going straight to the source," Emily declared. "That heavy truck that hit our security detail. I caught the logo on the mud flaps before it rammed them. It belongs to Cray Logistics. He's moving a highly valuable shipment tonight. That's why he was in town. That's why he was so desperate and rattled." "You want to go to the docks?" Julian asked, utterly incredulous. "Tonight? Alone?" "Not alone," Emily said, looking deliberately at the Glock pistol in the glove box. "We have the critical element of surprise. He thinks we are either dead or running terrified. He will never expect the prey to willfully walk right into the wolf's den." She reached for the gun and expertly checked the magazine, a display of proficiency that genuinely surprised Julian. "Let's go steal a shipment, Julian." The port of New York was a massive, desolate labyrinth of rusted shipping containers, stacked impossibly high and towering cranes that looked like the skeletal dinosaurs against the stormy night sky. The rain had now slowed to a fine, freezing mist that clung to everything. Julian parked the beast nearly a mile away, hiding it effectively behind a derelict, crumbling warehouse. They moved the rest of the distance on foot, slipping through the deep shadows like practiced ghosts. Emily had swapped her shredded heels for a pair of sturdy tactical boots pulled from Julian's trunk, but she still wore the ruined velvet gown, now soaked and torn at the hem, smeared with mud and oil. She looked like a fallen queen who had come back from the grave to reclaim her throne with nothing but blood and fire. "Pier 42, Emily whispered, pointing toward a massive hangar where powerful floodlights defiantly cut through the oppressive gloom. "That's Cray's main distribution hub. There are perimeter guards," Julian noted instantly, scanning the area with a small thermal monocular. "4 of them heavily armed. They are looking for a frontal assault," Emily calculated. "They are absolutely not looking for a systemic failure." She pulled out her phone. It was cracked from the crash but still thankfully functional. She quickly accessed the Port Authority's grid, utilizing a backdoor she had engineered 5 years ago during a forgotten consulting gig for the city government. "Watch the lights," she murmured. 3 excruciating seconds later, the high-powered floodlights on Pier 42 surged blindingly bright, and then simultaneously exploded in a sharp shower of sparks and smoke. The entire pier instantly plunged into absolute darkness. "Go," Julian commanded. They sprinted across the open tarmac. The guards were shouting, completely blinded and deeply confused, their handheld flashlights dancing erratically in the darkness. Emily and Julian slipped silently through a side maintenance door just moments before the backup generators roared to life. Inside, the warehouse was cavernous. It was filled floor to ceiling with wooden crates, all stamped conspicuously with the logo of a generic fruit company. "Bananas," Julian whispered, prying a lid open with a crowbar he found near the door. He pushed aside the damp straw packing material. Beneath it was not fruit. It was cold, hard metal, sleek silver casings arranged precisely in rows. "Guidance chips," Emily said, her breath catching in her throat. She carefully picked one up. It was stamped with a chillingly familiar serial number. SD Horizon. These are the prototype chips Marcus was developing, she realized. He told the board the entire project was a failure. He told me they were scrap metal. He was secretly selling them to Cray, Julian realized, his face hardening with disgust and rage. "These chips can guide a missile with millimeter accuracy, Emily. Cray isn't just a smuggler. He is an international arms dealer. He's selling stolen American technology to foreign warlords. And Marcus was his supplier," Emily said, a curl of profound self-loathing touching her lip. "My ex-husband wasn't just a simple cheater. He was a traitor." A touching realization. A voice boomed menacingly from the catwalk high above. But a little too late, I'm afraid. The backup generators slammed on with a deafening, echoing hum. High-intensity floodlights immediately drenched the warehouse floor. Emily and Julian froze, caught entirely in the spotlight. Victor Cray stood on the metal gantry 20 feet above them. He was flanked by 6 heavily built men, all holding assault rifles pointed directly at the floor. The immediate exits were blocked. "You are a relentlessly persistent woman," Emily, Victor called down, his voice resonating sharply off the steel walls. "I truly have to admire the tenacity. Hacking my car, brilliant. Shutting down my power, classic. But down here, in the real world where things matter, bullets beat brains every single time." Julian immediately stepped in front of Emily, shielding her body with his own. "Let her go, Victor. It's me you want. I'm the competition in your territory." "Oh, Julian," Victor laughed, beginning his slow descent down the metal stairs, savoring every moment of his victory. "You're not competition. You're merely an irritating nuisance. But her? She's a dangerous loose end, and I abhor loose ends." He reached the ground floor and strode toward them, stopping precisely 10 feet away. He signaled his men, and the assault rifles raised in deadly unison. "Any last words?" Victor sneered, his cold eyes gleaming. "Perhaps a final strategy you'd like to share?" Emily stepped out from behind Julian's protection. She did not look remotely scared. She looked, impossibly, bored. She checked her watch again. "Actually, yes," she said calmly, her voice echoing slightly. "I have a question for you, Victor. Do you happen to know how Wi-Fi works in a massive, steel-reinforced warehouse like this?" Victor frowned, puzzled by the irrelevant question. "What? It doesn't," Emily answered simply. "The signal bounces terribly. It's awful. That's precisely why I didn't try to hack your internal network to call for help earlier." "Smart," Victor conceded, an arrogant smile returning. "So you're admitting you're trapped?" "No," Emily smiled, her eyes suddenly gleaming with a triumphant light. "I'm admitting that I needed a much stronger signal. So, about 10 minutes ago, while we were standing outside the door, I linked my phone directly to the Port Authority's emergency broadcast system. It uses a localized, high-powered frequency that overrides everything else on the grid." "So what?" Victor scoffed dismissively. "You called 911? "No," Emily said, her voice rising with chilling finality. "I started a live stream video feed to the FBI's Cybercrime Division and the Department of Homeland Security." She pointed toward a small, insistent red light blinking on her phone, which was propped up subtly on a nearby wooden crate behind them. "They've been watching and listening intently for the past 3 minutes, Victor. They heard you freely admit to the arms dealing. They saw the stolen chips, and they definitely just heard you explicitly order your men to kill us both." Victor's face instantly went paper white, the blood draining away. He looked wildly at the tiny, blinking red light, then back at the woman he had underestimated. "Kill them!" Victor screamed, losing every shred of his composure. "Kill them now and destroy the massive skylights of the warehouse shattered violently inward. Thick black ropes dropped from the ceiling rafters. "FBI! "Drop your weapons," a voice thundered from above. At the exact same moment, the massive steel bay doors of the warehouse were rammed open by an armored SWAT vehicle. Flashbangs detonated simultaneously, filling the entire room with blinding white light and deafening, chaotic noise. Victor's men scrambled, firing their weapons blindly in panic, but they were overwhelmed instantly. Agents in full tactical gear swarmed the floor. Victor turned sharply to run, sprinting desperately toward a small back office. "He's getting away," Emily shouted over the din. Julian didn't hesitate for a second. He took off after Victor. Victor scrambled into his office and tried to slam the heavy steel door shut, but Julian threw his full shoulder against it, bursting violently into the room. Victor pulled a small pistol from his desk drawer. He turned, aiming directly at Julian's chest. But Julian was faster. He closed the distance in just 2 powerful strides, knocking the gun from Victor's grasp with a brutal clinical chop. He grabbed the older man by the lapels of his expensive suit and slammed him hard against the wall. That, Julian growled, his breath coming hard, was for the car. He punched Victor, a solid, perfectly placed right hook that laid the crime boss out cold on the floor like a sack of stones. Julian stepped back, carefully adjusting his cuffs, breathing heavily. Emily appeared calmly in the doorway. She looked down at the unconscious Victor Cray, then up at Julian. "Nice right hook," she said, a faint smile finally tugging at the corner of her mouth. "I learned it from a strategist." Julian grinned, wincing slightly as he rubbed his knuckles. Outside, the air was filled with the triumphant wail of sirens, a loud symphony of justice. The courtroom was dramatically different this time. It was the federal district court, and it was packed tightly with spectators and journalists. Marcus Sterling stood before the stern judge. He looked 10 years older than his age. His thinning hair was unkempt, his posture utterly slumped. He wasn't wearing his customary oud wood cologne. He smelled purely of raw, unadulterated fear. "Marcus Sterling," the judge read slowly from the verdict document. "On the counts of conspiracy to commit treason, massive money laundering, and systemic fraud, this court finds you guilty. You are hereby sentenced to 25 years in federal prison without the possibility of parole." The gavel banged down heavily. It sounded precisely like the closing lid of a coffin. Marcus turned to look out at the gallery. He scanned the rows of spectators, his eyes desperately searching for a flicker of sympathy, for anyone who might offer a shred of recognition. He saw the cold, judging faces, but only 2 mattered. He saw Silas Vance, who quickly averted his gaze, burying his chin deeper into his expensive overcoat. He saw his mistress, Jessica, who was already hunched over her phone, her thumb scrolling rapidly, completely absorbed in texting someone else, the moment of his downfall already boring to her. Then he saw her. Emily sat motionless in the back row. She was wearing a cream-white suit, perfectly tailored, immaculate, and sharp, a stark contrast to the drab gray she had worn when they first met. Beside her sat Julian Thorne, his presence solid, unwavering. Marcus stopped struggling momentarily as the bailiffs gripped his arms and began to drag him toward the side door. "Emily!" he screamed, the sound raw and desperate, echoing off the marble walls. "Emily, please. I'm sorry. I didn't know. They made me do it." Emily didn't stand up. She didn't speak. She just watched him. That same cool, utterly chilling detachment she had first exhibited the day they signed the divorce papers was fixed upon him now. It was not hatred, which would have been easier to bear, but complete indifference. She gave him a small, almost imperceptible nod, a definitive goodbye not just to a husband, but to an entire past life that she was finally sealing shut. Marcus was hauled roughly through the side door, his guttural screams fading quickly into the oppressive silence of the empty corridor. Outside the courthouse, the spring sun was brilliant and warm. The air was crisp and clean, smelling faintly of blooming jasmine, a perfect, mocking contrast to the stale atmosphere of the courtroom. "Are you okay?" Julian asked gently, stepping close as they descended the wide stone steps together. "I thought I would feel happy," Emily admitted, pulling her shoulders back, feeling the unfamiliar lightness of true freedom. But not exactly. What do you feel then? Light? She said, lifting her face to the sun. I feel incredibly light, like I've finally been able to put down a heavy, cumbersome suitcase I've been forced to carry for a decade. A valet pulled up to the curb. But it wasn't the charcoal Rolls-Royce that had always signified Marcus's power. It was a bright, searing red convertible. A vintage, meticulously restored Jaguar E-Type. It was kinetic, fast, and undeniably her own. Yours? Julian asked, raising an eyebrow in genuine admiration. Bought it this morning, Emily replied, sliding oversized, glamorous sunglasses onto her face. With my first bonus check. I thought I needed something considerably faster than the Sterling Standard. Where are you going now? I have one last stop to make, Emily said, the faint hint of a challenging smile playing on her lips. Do you want to come along? Always, he confirmed, opening the passenger door for her. They drove out to the Hamptons, the top down, the wind whipping through their hair. The drive was quiet, punctuated only by the low rumble of the powerful engine and a shared sense of peaceful anticipation. They pulled up to the massive estate that had once been the ultimate trophy, the envy of Emily's entire former social circle, the Sterling Mansion. It was empty now. The sheer scale of the house was pathetic in its neglect. The windows were dark, like vacant eyes, and the meticulously manicured lawn was overgrown and shaggy. The bank seized it, you know, Julian said, leaning against the polished fender of the Jaguar. It's going up for auction next week. They want top dollar to cover Marcus's debts. I know, Emily said, stepping away from the car. I bought it this morning. Julian looked at her, genuinely surprised, his amusement replaced by confusion. You bought it? Why, Emily, it's full of nothing but bad memories. Not for long, she said simply. She walked up the long, imposing driveway. She didn't go to the front door, which was sealed with foreclosure notices. Instead, she walked straight to the entrance gate, to the large, custom-cut granite sign cemented into the landscaping that proudly declared, the Sterling Estate. She walked back to the trunk of the vintage Jaguar and pulled out a sledgehammer. It was heavy, industrial iron, weighted and unforgiving. Emily? Julian whispered, watching her. A mix of intrigue and deep amusement on his face. Emily took a deep, steadying breath, gripping the cold handle of the hammer. This was not just an act of vengeance. It was an exorcism. She swung the hammer, driving it forward with the full force of a decade of suppressed rage. Asterisk crack. The stone shattered instantly. The word Sterling broke jaggedly in half, sending shards flying. She swung again and again, relentless. Dust and chips of white granite flew into the air, clouding the spring sun. She destroyed the name. She destroyed the legacy. She obliterated the very physical marker of the life that had almost destroyed her. When she was finally done, she dropped the hammer, the iron tool clattering onto the broken stone. She was panting heavily, sweat glistening brightly on her forehead, but her expression was one of profound relief. I'm not going to live here, she told Julian, wiping dust from her eyes. I'm going to bulldoze the house to the foundation. I'm donating the land to the city. It's going to be a park, a place where people can walk their dogs and their children can run, a place that embodies freedom. Julian walked over to her slowly. He gently wiped a smudge of stone dust from her cheekbone. The architect rebuilds, he said softly, looking deep into her eyes. No, Emily corrected him, her voice strong and clear. The architect designs. And I am designing a brand new life. She took his hand, her gaze unyielding. Are you in the blueprint, Julian? Julian smiled, bringing her hand up and kissing the back of her knuckles with utter devotion. I'm the foundation, Emily. As long as you want me to be. Emily looked back at the ruin of the sign, the only physical evidence of her past that remained, and then looked at the man who had stood by her through the complete dismantling of her world. Let's go home, she said. They got into the bright red car. Emily reached out and revved the engine, the powerful roar echoing over the now quiet, expectant estate. She didn't look back in the rearview mirror. There was absolutely nothing behind her worth a single glance. The road ahead was wide open, blazing with possibilities. And that is how Emily Sterling went from being the silenced wife in a suffocating gray coat to the formidable woman who not only survived an empire's collapse but actively brought it down. She proves that sometimes the best revenge isn't screaming, fighting, or throwing accusations. It's succeeding, it's achieving financial and emotional triumph on a scale her oppressors could never fathom. It's walking away from the people who undervalue you and stepping fully into a life where you are the queen of your own destiny. Marcus thought he had stripped her of everything valuable, but in reality, he only stripped her of the suffocating things that were holding her back. If this story of ultimate justice and design satisfied your craving for closure, make sure to smash that like button right now. Your support helps us create more compelling stories where the underdog not only survives but takes it all. And don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell. We have a new story coming next week about a homeless man who wins a multi-million-dollar lottery but must hide the winning ticket from his incredibly greedy family. You won't want to miss the shocking twist ending. Comment below. What would you do if your ex walked out of court and into a vintage red Billionaire's limo? Let me know your thoughts in the comments. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next story.